Hey, I'm glad you're here. This is Coach Bill. Today we're discussing pitching from the ground up and the rule of the legs. So as we begin our topics here on pitching, one of the first things I want to begin to understand, what it is that I'm exactly trying to accomplish. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this, and we're just going to go from the ground up. Without getting too far into the weeds here today, but we begin our understanding of how I want to move. So at the end of the day, I want to understand movement that has some type of scientific backing into it, rather than bro science. The old "I did it this way, therefore you're going to do it this way," or "This is how so and so does it." So today, what I want to do, just to set up, I want to take a look at some of the questions I believe I would want to ask. I want to talk briefly about some of the mistakes, and then I want to get right into the very first thing that you can apply today that will help you as a pitcher. And one of the first things I believe, I really don't think pitching instructors create velocity in as much as we can plug some leaks. And if we plug velocity leaks, it sort of has the idea of increasing velocity. So I think there's always some things there. So I like to begin these three questions, when we're trying to figure out how we're going to identify leaks. And there are some really brilliant minds, well, at the time they were mavericks, but the word is getting out there, but there's some wonderful people. And for me, it began with a gentleman by the name of Ron Wolforth, and he would always speak of whose mechanics. And a lot of times what happens as pitching instructors, hitting instructors, baseball and softball instructors, if it looks good to someone's eye, then those must be correct mechanics. But that's not always necessarily true. And a lot of times, especially with the young players, they hear exceptionally well. They hear exactly what is being said, and they will apply what they're hearing. Now, as adults, I don't think we use our language very well, and although we have an intent in our head, that's not necessarily how we speak. However, it is how the young generation hears it, and that's what they try to apply. And instead of them understanding how they're moving, they're trying to please me as a coach. And in fact, if you were getting questions like, "Is that right? Is that what you want? How did that look?" then we're probably not in that right direction. So we want to figure out whose mechanics are they. And from my perspective, if there are 10 pitchers, there are 10 sets of mechanics. If there are 100 pitchers, there are 100 sets of mechanics. I don't think any two people are alike. It's much the same way as hitters. Everybody's a little bit different. Everybody anatomically is put together slightly different. And so therefore, we can't expect everyone to look exactly the same. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to look at. The second area that I want to do, if I'm having issues up top, I'm going to look on the bottom. If I have issues on the right, I want to look on the left. If I'm having issues from the back side, I want to look at the front side. So I think you get the idea that I'm trying to contrast. I'm trying to look in the opposite directions of where issues are happening. And I would say I'll drop Lance Wheeler's name here, because I do believe he has a pinpoint accurate comment when he says that the arm is at the mercy of the hips, and if we can't turn through the middle, then we're probably going to have some issues. And Lance talks about the middle, talks about almost as if you're on a hammock, and the importance of being able to move the middle. So having said that, I hear a lot of times of young pitchers being told that they have to use their legs better, and yet they are never instructed how to use their legs. And in fact, one of the biggest myths that I see out here is typically a triple extension off that back foot. And what I mean by triple extension is the extension through the ankle, through the knee, through the hip, that locks up, and it's a straight leg look. And when that happens, a lot of times pitchers are pulled out of the ground. They come to the ball of the foot, and because of that, the body's going to put itself together in a way. It will have to make some compensations, but when I'm pitched forward, when I come to the ball of the foot, I'm pitching forward, and probably more often than not, the body the front leg will land across the body, and we're going to force the arm out to the side. The arm's trying to get quick in order to get to the point where it needs to, but we see a lot of stress then that rolls down through the elbow and up through the glenohumeral joint, based on the straight arm forces that occur through that. So actually we see a lack of mid-body control at that point. So the straight leg idea, pushing off the mound to gain ground, pushing off the mound to have a longer stride. I don't think that's the way that we want to get to having a longer stride, and we'll get to that further into the series here. But so that's the first area that I look at, and then probably more so than not, the idea of balancing at the top, drills that where we're balancing, we toss a pitcher a ball and we throw. Some of the stuff that was put to sleep a number of years ago, but it still exists in a large majority. But we've seen the numbers, we understand some things. There's some great research going on, and yet some of these older ideas still prevail. So, having said that, what's hurting more than helping? If I'm not progressing, if I'm not seeing velocity increases, if I'm having a hard time throwing, what is it exactly that I do? And again, getting in tune with how I move becomes very, very important to your success. All right, so I want to start here. Let's go here. Okay, so this is from SetPro. This is from Dr. Paul Nyman, and very many thanks. We want to make sure that he gets credit for this. But when we begin here, I want to start with the back foot. So I just wanted to bring out this little skeletal schematic, and I'm just looking right in here at how Paul has this drawn up, and there's a pressure that is rolling right through that ankle, and locking that foot into the ground, pushing that foot into the ground. Okay, Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So we have an ability to throw without using our legs, but obviously there's some synergy that comes along with using our legs. It's if you were to walk in sand, you don't throw quite as well as if you're throwing off of a ball field or off of a cement surface where you're able to interact with the ground a little bit better, where the energy flow isn't being dampened. So where I would begin, very first thing is I would just do a common leg lift, just lifting the front leg, just pulling it up. And what we want to look for when we do that leg lift is this back foot moving? If I stabilize the back foot, I now stand a good chance to transfer the energy that's pushing back up through. I have a really good chance of increasing the amount of energy that's flowing through my system. But what I want to make sure is my back foot in the ground? Do my toes pop up? Is my heel sliding when I lift? Is it lifting when I lift? Does the inside of my foot rock back? And those are the things I want to look at. So I'm just going to lift 4 or 5 times, 6 times, 10 times, whatever it is. And that's what I want to make sure. That's the very first step. Do I have back foot stability? All right. That's enough for today. Come on back in here tomorrow. We're going to start, we'll continue up the chain here a little bit. But for today, back foot stability. Back foot stability. I want to come back here with our kinetic chain picture here. I want us to look where we're going to head here tomorrow. We're going to start looking at this ideal use of the back leg. Okay, so we continue our talk on discussion on how to use our back leg, and we'll start talking a little bit more about that tomorrow. But for today, back foot stability, back foot lift. Let's see if we're there. All right, I'll see you right back here tomorrow.